Good morning. This is the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for this Wednesday, January 22nd. Looking at precipitation the past 7 days, not much except in the highest terrain of Utah and central Idaho. Areas in the green indicate a ½ to an inch of precipitation, but little to none elsewhere as you head further south and west. In terms of percent of normal on the right-hand side, you can see the driest areas, 10% or less, in that dark red color. Snowfall in the past 72 hours on the left. We did have some amounts that were in the 3 to 6 inch range. Some locally higher amounts where you see the pockets in yellow. It's near a foot or more. And more importantly, on the right-hand side, you can see the vast snowpack that continues across the higher terrain of central Idaho, western Wyoming, across the Uintas and the Wasatch, as well as the mountains of northern Nevada and the Sierra Front. But the middle to lower elevations, for the most part, have little snow cover on the ground, mainly below about 5,000 feet. Satellite imagery shows a deep storm system up here in the Gulf of Alaska, a weak ridge of high pressure building in across the west coast, but that'll get squashed and pushed down by some of the storm energy that's coming through. And we're actually looking at a pretty progressive pattern of systems coming through every 2 or 3 days, so no persistent long-standing ridge of high pressure seen so far. 1,000 hour fuels, driest in southern Nevada and southwest Utah and the Arizona Strip, somewhere around 11 to 15%. Otherwise, green or dark green indicates 16 to 20% or more of fuel moisture on the 1,000 hours. That's where the heavies are still quite moist. For this afternoon, here's our weather pattern. Despite the ridge of high pressure building in, there's quite a bit of Pacific moisture spilling over the top of this ridge, sometimes referred to as a dirty ridge by meteorologists, where the dirt is the moisture spilling on in, and that's the clouds and light precipitation, where you see the areas of green through here. Dispersion-wise, the areas in the purple are the worst, and that's confined to parts of central Idaho, maybe some pockets here in Utah. But otherwise gets better as you head further south. Transport winds picking up a bit across parts of Nevada and across the higher terrain of Utah, but you can see the purple shades in the middle to lower elevations, still quite a bit of inversions in the valleys, which is common this time of year. Mixing heights, though, will be improving during the course of the afternoon, and areas in green and yellow are the best. The areas in purple, where those inversions will probably linger throughout the day, making burning probably not a good idea. And then for tomorrow, high pressure building in through here. This moisture gets pushed further north to the northern edge and eastern edges of our geographic area. You can see the dispersion with that high gets a little bit worse, a lot more of that purple shading, especially in northern and central areas. You have to get quite a bit south before the dispersion gets better, as you see the colors of yellow and white. Overall, transport winds on the left best will be across far southern areas and mainly across the ridge tops and higher terrain. Otherwise, we'll see more inversions in those purple areas across parts of northeastern Nevada, a good swath of Utah. It's those areas of green to yellow where the vertical mixing will be several thousand feet above ground level. Now, on Friday, the high pressure ridge starts to break down. There's another system moving onshore, but still lots of purple in place across the north and the higher terrain of Utah as well. That's where dispersion will be the worst. You see light transport winds in those areas, low mixing heights, especially across Utah, parts of southeast Idaho and northeastern Nevada. Again, best to the south where they'll get some sunshine. The Utah Clearing Index shows that the areas in purple, the poor dispersion will be increasing in aerial coverage as we go from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Best dispersion areas in the green, yellow, and red. Precipitation over the next 3 days, fairly light, confined to the northern half of the geographic area, anywhere from 1/100th to maybe 1/4 of an inch of precipitation. As we go further down into the weekend, bit stronger system moving into Northern California, Pacific Northwest, and into parts of the Great Basin on Saturday. That should start stirring things up a little bit. And by Sunday, you'll notice on the right-hand side, the dispersion really starts to improve. You can see the wind flow coming out of the south. The worst dispersion will be to the north, and you can see this area in green shows where we'll probably see some steady precipitation and another system waiting in the wings. And on Monday, dispersion really improves. Notice the wind flow here on the right becoming more of a northwesterly or northerly flow, and that's shown here by the heights. And then on Tuesday, again, even though high pressure tries to build in, it's more of that dirty ridge effect where there's so much Pacific moisture that it starts to spill over the top of the ridge, bringing some light precipitation. We see the areas of darkest green. And on the right-hand side, the ventilation or dispersion, best in areas that are in the white, worst in areas that are in the purple. Precipitation accumulation, days 4 and 5. This will be Saturday evening through Monday evening. Again, 1/100 of an inch to maybe 1/4 of an inch in those darkening shades of green. Nothing where you see the white, and some local pockets of heavier amounts in the highest terrain of Utah, western Wyoming, and of course parts of central Idaho, the highest terrain. Now the 8 to 14 day outlook, this takes us from January 29th to the February 4th. Above normal temperature signal in most areas, and a drier than normal signal for the southern half of the geographic area, but we will continue to see near or slightly above normal moisture levels across the northern half of the geographic area. This concludes our briefing. Next update coming up this Friday.